Hello and welcome to the third ever episode of the Fourth and Goal podcast. I'm your host, Drew, and those of you who have watched previous episodes may notice that Rob is not here. He is off traveling for work for about the next month, so I'm going to be hosting these podcasts solo or maybe with a guest star. The one exception will be in 2 weeks, where I will also be traveling for 1 week for work, and there will be no episode that week. We're really sorry. We wish we could put one out every week, but we both happen to be traveling at that time. Either way, moving into the episode, and the most exciting news of all, football is almost back. At the time that this episode is going to be uploaded, football will be just over 30 hours away, and I couldn't be more excited. So, without further ado, in the episode, we're going to start with news and notes. And starting in news and notes, the big things that have happened are earlier today or yesterday, when you'll be listening to this podcast, Travis Kelce has hyperextended his knee and is questionable to play in the season opener on Thursday night. I mean, the reality of this situation is, even if he is healthy, he's not going to be 100% playing in that game. Hyperextended knees usually take a few weeks at minimum to recover. So 2 days, I highly doubt that's going to be enough time for him to be 100%. But we've seen Travis Kelce play without that. If he's playing, I think he's still going to be an effective player, especially against the Lions, who, while the secondary is much improved, they haven't really played together. It'll be interesting to see what happens. In other injury news, Cooper Kupp is currently getting checked out for a hamstring injury that has been listed as day-to-day since basically the beginning of camp, but that's leaving him in doubt for the season opener, and who knows how long, given this injury has lingered way longer than anyone expected it to. So we'll see what happens, but that's two big-name players who could be missing to start the season. That could hurt your team, your fantasy team, and could put a damper on the first week of the season. But we have so many great players that are going to be playing in week one. There will be enough to watch, I'm sure. The other news that I do really want to talk about is the pass rushers and their contract holdouts. I feel all off-season long, we've been talking about the running back market and the running back holdouts with Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, and the hold-in type deal with Jonathan Taylor. But we haven't talked enough about the pass rush holdouts. We have Chris Jones and Nick Bosa, two of the best pass rushers in the league, who have been holding out all of camp. And I think the expectation was these guys are going to play because they're not on the franchise tag. They're a year away from being tagged, more similar to Jonathan Taylor's situation, where he actually does have contract remaining, not just a franchise tag. But as the season nears, and especially in Chris Jones's case, where, you know, from the time of recording, it's about 48 hours until the Chiefs play their first game, and Chris Jones still hasn't signed. I can't imagine, even if he does sign, that he's going to be playing in that game. And that's a big loss because the Chiefs and also the 49ers have to fancy themselves as top-tier Super Bowl threats, and missing both teams' best defensive players and top 10 pass rushers in the league has got to hurt their defenses significantly. You know, Nick Bosa was Defensive Player of the Year last year, and Chris Jones, I think, is far and away the best defensive player on the Chiefs, a defense that, even with him, is middle of the pack. Obviously, we know the Chiefs' offense can play really well, but if the defense doesn't hold up, who knows how the Chiefs will fare in an absolutely stacked AFC. But then also, beyond these guys, starting last Thursday, Brian Burns of the Carolina Panthers has started to hold in. He reported to camp. He was there the whole time, but as of Thursday, he is no longer reporting to practices, and it's unknown whether he'll play due to contract negotiations. That means that 3 of the top 10 sack leaders from last year right now are not playing, not due to injury, not due to retirement, but due to contract issues, even though all 3 of these guys have 1 year left on their deal. And the problem here is absolutely the franchise tag. the franchise tag doesn't exist in any other sports, and I think in recent years, we've really seen the problem the franchise tag creates. Even though none of these guys are on the franchise tag, just the looming factor of the franchise tag is making these guys hold out. If they were able to go to free agency and knew they were going to get an open market deal come the offseason, I don't think any of these guys are holding out. They say, fine, we're just going to get a great contract down the road. But right now, they're looking at the fact that they're playing on a one-year deal right now. And then they'll be playing on a one-year below market deal based on their talent, and then likely playing on another one-year deal at market rate, meaning all three of these guys know they got to play 3 years of good quality football on one-year deals. Only one of those years is going to be at market rate in order to reach true free agency where they can make longer term money. And that's why these guys don't want to sign and don't want to get the franchise tag, because it really impacts their long-term earnings as well as their long-term security. Look, football is an incredibly violent game. We have seen tons of great players have career-ending injuries. Now, we don't hope that for anyone, but if you're a player, you got to understand that's a possibility and that you might have lifelong health concerns that insurance can't cover because you're no longer employed, you're no longer under your team's insurance plan. And yeah, you want to get paid. You want to have that security. And I know I hear all the time people saying, oh, these guys should just play. They make so much money anyway. But the fact of the matter is, yeah, they make a ton of money. But where do you want the money to go? Do you want the owners, who are the richest people in the organizations, to get that money? I mean, I don't. I look at it and say it's either the owners or the players, and I'd much rather the players get it for putting their bodies on the lines than the owners get it. But maybe that's just me. Either way, I hate the franchise tag. I'd like if they adopted something like they have in basketball, where it's restricted free agency. The team has the opportunity to match a player, to not lose like a franchise guy, but they don't actually force the player to play there on a predetermined salary that can really game the system for top-end players. You know, they do have this. It's the non-exclusive franchise tag. The problem is the exclusive franchise tag. So I just think we need to get rid of that. Make teams use the non-exclusive franchise tag. I think that allows for players to still get their fair market value salary without hurting the teams as well. It allows a team to make sure they keep their player, and I understand the value of that. Either way, I don't want to get too deep into this, so let's move on to Week 1 of the NFL season, and I couldn't be more excited for this coming up. So, going into Week 1, I think the biggest in Week 1, I think the main thing to talk about is who has the most to prove. Obviously, it's just Week 1. You have time to recover, but a few guys I want to talk about. The first being Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers realistically was a mediocre quarterback last year. And I know with all the offseason hype, with Hard Knocks, all this stuff, no one likes to think about Aaron Rodgers as a mediocre quarterback. But the truth is, that's what he was. I think that this year is really important for Aaron Rodgers because we've seen guys like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady move to new teams and win pretty early on. And we've seen Tom Brady prove that a quarterback can play into their 40s if they are an elite level talent and an elite level mind at the position. And so we want to see if Aaron Rodgers belongs on that same level, in that same conversation with Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. And with his down year last year, there's a lot of questions. Is he regressing? Is he doing what Peyton Manning ultimately did in his late 30s? And let's not forget, Aaron Rodgers is turning 40 years old this year. I think he's got a lot to prove. He's in the Monday Nighter, a primetime game that almost everyone's going to be watching. It's against the Buffalo Bills, who have had a hot and cold defense. They are missing Von Miller, but Jerry Hughes is there. The secondary looks to be fully healthy. So this is going to be a defense that should have some very good players and can give Aaron Rodgers a big test. So that's going to be a huge game. to see if Aaron Rodgers and the Jets are a legit contender or an offseason darling that's being really overhyped. I hope for the sake of competitiveness that they're really good, because I love seeing more and more good teams. But I think in my heart of hearts, I expect it to be more hype than fact for the Jets. The other player that I think has a lot to prove this year, and I've talked about it on a previous podcast episode, is Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson looked on the path to be a Hall of Famer, but last year started to derail that path. I think he's going to get there so long as he has a couple more decent seasons. He doesn't need to win Super Bowls. He doesn't need to win MVPs. He just needs to be a good quarterback and rack up some of those counting stats and have that longevity to make it, because he already does have a Super Bowl. He already does have a number of years. But the narrative gets really hurt when you leave a Pete Carroll offense and Geno Smith comes in and is better than you. Like, that's probably was the craziest stat line from last year. And so now that Russell Wilson has Sean Payton, a coach that's considered a quarterback's guru, I think it's really coming down to, can Russell Wilson perform, which is going to really help solidify both Russell Wilson and Sean Payton's legacy. Though Sean Payton's a Hall of Famer already, no matter what. So, you know, he's got a lot more going for him. There's a lot less on the line for him than with Russell Wilson. But that's the quick and dirty of the guys who have the most to prove. I do want to spend most of the time of this episode talking about the games, previewing them. And the first one we have is the Chiefs and Lions, the opening nighter, Thursday nighter. This is one of the best games of the week. That's why it's on the Thursday nighter. A lot of people might question the Lions. I know Rob, my co-host, doesn't like them. I, as a Lions fan, am both ecstatic about how good they are, but also I've seen enough Lions history to know not to get too ahead of myself. We as Lions fans, we're very tentative. We've been hurt too many times to be full bore. That's why when a lot of people talk about the Lions hype, I always say it's not Lions fans hyping, it's everyone else. Lions fans are conservative. We don't trust like that. But either way, I think this game should be really good. The Lions had one of the best offensives last year. So did the Chiefs. The Chiefs were a middle-of-the-pack defense, though missing Chris Jones really does hurt. And the Lions were a really bad defense last year, but made tons of top-tier additions to that defense, including basically an entirely new secondary with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Brian Branch, Emmanuel Mosley, and Cam Sutton, as well as adding a first-round pick in Jack Campbell at interior linebacker. All these guys, plus advancements from first-year players last year, Aiden Hutchinson, Josh Houston, and Malcolm Rodriguez, should lead this team to being at least a competitive defense, a middle-of-the-pack defense, which is what the Lions need to be a competitive team, so long as their offense can hold up. So it's going to be really interesting. I think the Chiefs are obviously the favorite in this game, and there's no doubt they should be. They're at home. They're probably the best team in the league. And Andy Reid, since he's been with the Chiefs, has won 8 opening day games in a row, including 9 of his 10 opening day games with the franchise. And Patrick Mahomes has never lost on opening day, which goes to show just how much of an uphill battle the Lions have in this game. That being said, you know, I think the Lions can surprise some teams. We've seen a lot of shocking results in these games in past years. There's a little bit of a lull, a little bit of a Super Bowl hangover that's often had in these games by the defending champions. Last year, we saw it with the Rams getting absolutely thwomped by the Bills. Now, yes, we learned later that the Rams kind of took a big step back, but this was when they still had Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp and Aaron Donald healthy. Like, everyone was healthy at this point in time. A big issue the Rams had last year was injuries. And so I think that this is a team that I think that was a game basically where the Rams were still good, but they had that hangover, and then they went from a Super Bowl hangover to really injured, and that's what hurt them last year. So Chiefs, again, I think they're the favorite, but at the end of the day, the Lions can contend. And me personally, being a Lions homer, I'm actually taking the Lions to upset in this game. I know it's 100% a homer pick. I don't deny it at all. But I think the Lions can surprise a lot of people. They want to ground and pound. And without Chris Jones and with a hurt or missing Travis Kelce compared to a Lions team who should be entering at 100% full health, I gotta take the Lions in this game because of that, because I think they could come out and punch them in the mouth. The big issues the Lions had were Travis Kelce and Chris Jones. Outside of Patrick Mahomes, obviously, those are the two guys that can really hurt the Lions, because who knows how Gardner Johnson's going to be for defending Travis Kelce, given how good Travis Kelce is. And the Lions' biggest issue is that interior offensive line. You know, their tackles are great, their center's good, but those guards are where the bigger weaknesses are, and that's where Chris Jones would eat. And with those guys not playing, I'm taking the Lions. Moving on to the other games I want to talk about. One game is the Bengals at the Browns. This game is probably one of the best games, and I think the best game at the 1 o'clock slot on Sunday. Yeah, the Bengals are favored, but this is in Cleveland. It's an Ohio game that's got to have a lot of rivalry going. And the Browns aren't a bad team, especially if we see Deshaun Watson like he was back when he played for the Texans and not like he played last year. Now, if you're like me, you're really hoping that Deshaun Watson plays like he did last year, because I'd prefer Deshaun Watson to suck and be out of the league, and to see the Browns, who gave up so much for a player of that little character, to have a few bad years is really what I'm hoping for. But at the end of the day, the Browns have a lot of people. Myles Garrett is a great player. Denzel Ward, a great player. Nick Chubb, they can run the ball even if they don't have that passing attack. And even without the passing attack, Deshaun Watson is still a threat on the ground. But at the end of the day, I think all of us are taking Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals to win this game. I mean, they're just so much better on paper than the Browns, and they have so many options at their disposal. I think the big thing is going to be how healthy is Joe Burrow. He obviously got injured. The expectation is he is going to start game 1, but that wasn't always the case when he got injured. There was a time where we thought he was going to miss a few weeks, and if he's not 100% healthy, a guy like Myles Garrett against that Bengals offensive line could eat, especially in a home game. So this is a game I think could be really competitive, but me personally, I got to trust Joe Burrow. I'm taking the Bengals in this one. One other competitive game in the non-primetime games that I really like is going to be the Dolphins at the Chargers. This is at the 4 o'clock slot. I think it's a really good game. Both these teams were playoff teams last year. Both teams, I think, are competing in the AFC, but are really trying to take that next step to being true contenders, not just playoff teams. They want to be on the level of the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Bengals, and not just in that kind of secondary tier that they're in, along with teams like the Jaguars, the Ravens, the Jets, and a few other teams out there. So I think that this is a big game to prove it. It's also Tua and Herbert, who were drafted 5-6 in the same draft. A big question at the time was who should go first. I think Tua was the popular pick and did end up going before Herbert. Me personally, in that draft, I love Justin Herbert. I thought he was significantly better than Tua, and I think so far in the NFL, he has shown to be better. That being said, both quarterbacks look like they should be starters. I actually released a few days ago a quarterback power ranking, and I have both these guys in my top 10. So I really like both of them, but I think this will be a really competitive game. Two really good teams with really high-powered passing offenses, and two defenses that they have pieces, but I expect this to be a high-scoring game overall. I'm going to take the Chargers in this one. I think primarily because they're at home, though that being said, a Chargers home field advantage really doesn't exist because that stadium's going to be, 10% full? Sorry, I have very little respect for Chargers fans. One of my best friends is a Chargers fan, but I always tell him there's only 10 Chargers fans in the world, and he's one of them. But I'm taking the Chargers in this game. I think not having to travel is going to be a benefit. And really, at the end of the day, I'm taking Herbert over Tua in this game. And I'm taking that Chargers pass rush. With Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa on the edges, I think this team just needs them both healthy, and they could be an absolutely deadly force. I just really hope they don't hurt Tua, because I can't watch Tua have another injury like he had last year. I just can't watch that again. And I don't think anyone wants to see that again. The other games to talk about are going to be the other primetime games. The Sunday nighter is the Cowboys at Giants. The team I actually think I like a lot more than other people is the Dallas Cowboys. I know no one wants to like the Dallas Cowboys, and I do not like them, but I do think they're a good team. They've got one of the best defenses in the league, and that often gets overlooked. Micah Parsons might be the best defensive player in the league already, and he's only 23 or 24 years old. He's very much in contention. I think he's actually the favorite for Defensive Player of the Year. Dak Prescott gets, a lot of flack for his interceptions that he throws, but he's still a very good quarterback, and he now has more weapons since they added Brandon Cooks. Tony Pollard's now going to be the guy in the backfield, and Zeke really didn't look like himself last year. I think the big question is going to be what the offense looks like with no Zach Martin, or if I don't think he's going to be back by that time. If he is, how good is he? But that's going to help them. But no Zach Martin could really impact their ability to run the ball, which I think their team has been built on for really the past decade. And that's what Dak Prescott thrives in that play action passing attack where teams have to load the box, and he's got guys like Brandon Cooks, CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz to throw the ball to. I think that the Cowboys are a very underrated team. And I think the same of the New York Giants. The Giants obviously don't have receivers. That's their big problem. But I think the addition of Darren Waller is going to be huge for this team. Darren Waller didn't have a great year last year with the Raiders, but that's because they have Hunter Renfrow, they have Devonta Adams, and they had a really great running game too. So he was really the fourth offensive option on a Raiders team that wasn't that great compared to a guy like Darren Waller, who's probably the second option behind Saquon Barkley in this team, and on a much better team in a much weaker conference. And so I think Darren Waller is absolutely going to eat this year for the Giants. I think Daniel Jones loves throwing to tight ends. We saw that last year with a bunch of no-name guys still getting a pretty significant target share, given they didn't really have wide receivers, and I expect that to balloon now that Darren Waller's there. As well, I think Brian Daboll is one of the best coaches in the league. He obviously won Coach of the Year last year. He helped turn the Bills' offense into one of the best running offenses in the league, even though outside of Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, they really don't have a ton of guys on offense and haven't had a ton of guys on offense. So I think Brian Daboll is an offensive genius. I think he'll make what he has work again, even now that they have a better offense than they did last year, adding in Darren Waller. And their defense is solid. Dexter Lawrence is one of the best interior pass rushers and interior run stuffers in the game. And being able to attack that point, especially if there's no Zach Martin in there, is going to be deadly against the game plan of the Dallas Cowboys. So in this game, I'm actually picking the New York Giants. I know that might sound shocking. This is definitely another upset pick that I'm taking, but I think the Giants at home, they're a good team. I think that the Cowboys will have a better season overall, but I am taking the Giants to pull a bit of an upset in this game and take it at home on Sunday Night Football. And I think most non-Cowboys fans out there will be very happy to see that happen if it does happen. And finally, the last game I want to go over, talked about it a little bit before, but it's the Bills at the Jets. 2 straight primetime games in New York City. Got to be a fun time to be down there. Sadly, I'm not, but hopefully some of you listeners are and are maybe able to go to some bars, go to some of those games. I think it'd be a great time. But yeah, Bills and Jets. The Jets are getting tested right away. Look at their schedule. The first half of their season is an absolute gauntlet and going to be a massive test to show if the Jets are a legit threat in this league or if they are just a pretender. And they got to start with the Bills right away. One of the best teams out there that's going to be a lot healthier. Obviously, no Von Miller hurts the Bills immensely. He was invaluable to that team last year when he was playing. But at the end of the day, they still got other great defensive options, and Aaron Rodgers is going to show that he is bouncing back with the Jets this year, and that Jets offensive line is still going to have their hands a bit full with guys like Jerry Hughes coming off the edge. I think that this could be a game where he's able to eat. Jerry Hughes is a guy that I really like to get a few sacks in this game just because I do not trust that Jets offensive line at all. But again, the Jets, this is going to be, I think, a bit of a defensive battle in some ways. I think the Bills have a great defense, but the Jets have a phenomenal defense. And it's going to be which one of Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers are able to pick apart the other defense. These teams played a few times last year, and Josh Allen didn't have phenomenal games against the Jets last year. I believe he won one of them, lost one of them. But at the end of the day, the Josh Allen wasn't able to solve them because Sauce Gardner is able to shut down Stephon Diggs. Because really, if you're able to shut down Stephon Diggs, there's not many outlets for Josh Allen to go to. Let's see how a rookie like Dalton Kincaid's able to perform. Let's see what the rest of the wide receiver core can do. If Cook can take a step forward in year 2 and be a really good running back. But again, you're going against Quinnen Williams and a few new guys on that defensive front that look very, very scary. The Jets have a great defense that is their identity and has been the identity they tried to have for years. So this could be a pretty low scoring game, but a game that's really going to tell us a lot about who the Jets are. Less so about who the Bills are, because I think we already know who the Bills are, but the Jets for sure. I am taking the Bills in this game, and it's primarily because I think they are the better team. Even if the Jets are for real, I think the Bills still have more, and Josh Allen is a better quarterback even than Aaron Rodgers, even if Aaron Rodgers bounces back. I just think Josh Allen is that good and will be able to win this game, even if it means using his legs and his secondary receivers as opposed to using Stephon Diggs. But that's it for most of the primetime games. I'm going to put on the screen right here so you can see all my picks for the week. So I have the Lions beating the Chiefs, the Falcons beating the Panthers, Browns beating Bengals, Jags beating Colts, Vikings beating Bucks, Saints beating Titans, 49ers beating Steelers, the football team beating the Cardinals, and then in my lock of the week, I have the Ravens beating the Texans. That's the game I have the most confidence in far and away. The Packers upsetting the Bears on the road, the Broncos beating the Raiders, the Eagles beating the Patriots, Chargers beating Dolphins, Seahawks beating Rams, Giants beating Cowboys, and Bills beating Jets. So only a few upsets there with the Lions, the Giants, and the Packers, but these are a few of the games that I think both teams should be competitive. I think the Packers are actually a team that is really underrated and undervalued. They have a lot of pieces on both offense and defense, and if Jordan Love is, a middle of the pack quarterback, which is what Aaron Rodgers was last year, this could very well be at least a 500 team, and I think is already better than what the Chicago Bears bring. I do not think the Chicago Bears are a very competent team. I think that the Packers have the ability to shut down a guy like Justin Fields. I expect this to be a fairly low-scoring game, but I am taking the Packers in that upset. But that's my pick for the week. That is the preview. It's going to be a bit of a shorter episode when it's just me here, just talking. So instead of being an hour, we're keeping it closer to half an hour. But we will be live streaming the primetime games. I will be live streaming on Thursday night, on Sunday night, and on Monday night on twitch.tv at 4th and Goal 1-1. You can see it right here on your screen as well. If you want to follow along a bit more, we do release daily shorts here. I'm also going to be releasing some highlights of those streams on our Twitch channel. You can find our Twitch channel right here. It's the same all our ats across all social media is at 4th and Goal 101 and is AND. So 4THANDGOAL 101. We hope to see you all there. Hope you enjoyed this episode. And for now, we'll see y'all later.